Welcome to another workshop offered by the University of Kentucky's Office of Work, Life, and Benefits. This month, we're going to be talking about the juggle is real, creating work-life harmony. And our guest speaker is Dr. Nichole Huff. Thank you so much, Dr. Huff, for being with us today.
All right, thank you for having me. All right, so let's jump in. First of all, like I said, I am Nichole Huff. I'm an assistant extension professor for family finance and resource management in the College of Agriculture, Food, and Environment, specifically in the School of Human Environmental Sciences. And the material that I'll speak to you about today comes from a curriculum that we have in FCS Extension that myself and some colleagues authored a few years back called Time Well Spent. And we'll specifically look today and focus on that work-life balance and what does that mean and how can we promote harmony within it. Um, so first, just if you have access to the chat, I'd love for this to be an engaging hour. So why did you sign up for this webinar? Those who are here, what made you sign up for this webinar? But yeah, chaos. Chaos is a perfect word, I think, to describe the beginning of a semester for sure, and a beginning of a school year, especially for those who work in academia. And if anyone is like myself, who is balancing those home and life responsibilities, it just adds to the chaos. Yeah, all those listed. Working, building more life into my schedule. I love that. Boundaries, finding a balance seems impossible. Absolutely. It's just too hard with the demands at home. Yes, I agree. And so I am a working mom. I have three kids right now that span from elementary school to a senior in high school. And it is every day I feel like I was telling a colleague yesterday, we were trying to schedule an event that either there is nothing on the calendar or all five people in my household have something on the calendar at the same time, and there's little in between. So I feel that absolutely. So, what I hope is that we can hit at some of those things that you put in the text chat, and I appreciate you putting that in there. And so, what we'll do over the next little bit together is we'll explore the relationship between work-life balance and productivity, and what does that look like? We'll examine personal and professional self-care strategies, and so how can we just promote our well-being in both of those areas? And then how we can prioritize our various roles and responsibilities. And so, how do we prioritize those? And then we'll discuss ways to, what to do when we're feeling overwhelmed, when there's just too many to-dos on our to-do list, and do we, how do we kind of calibrate that so that we are able to focus without it impeding on our mental health? Tall task for sure. All right. So if you can, I don't know if you can relate to this little fella on the screen, but I can. Like many of you have just so many plates spinning at one time that it does feel like a balancing act. And so one of the things I mentioned, I'm the state specialist with Cooperative Extension for family finance and resource management. And that it absolutely includes finances. And so, the piggy bank, but that finances are just one of the many resources that we have to balance to sustain our livelihood, right? And so our financial health is one thing, but there are also many resources that a family must manage. And so that includes our time, our energy, our relationships. It includes our physical resources. And so I usually use the toilet paper as my icon here because We can't forget the toilet paper scarcity of 2020 and what happens when our family's resources are threatened. But also now with things like rising cost of groceries and foods and goods and services and housing and electricity and gasoline and just everything, our resources are really stretched thin. And our health is also a resource that we juggle. And so, in the juggle is real, right? Right, the name of the workshop, but the juggle is real. And so how can we take a step back and look at ways to balance things so that we feel on top of it and not like any plate is about to drop at any time. Okay, so back to the text chat. So what are some of the demands that you are currently juggling? So what are some of the home work life like, what are you juggling? Give everybody a chance there. Just type in a few things. Projects at work, projects at home. And all of the above, right? Like so all of those plates. So yeah, sports, absolutely. Yes, family projects, work duties, single mom of a toddler. So that in one sentence is enough to break out sweat on anyone. And so that is a lot. Yeah, absolutely. And so it can be really hard, right? So immediate family, extended elderly family, yep, work, chronically understaffed, and then trying to maintain some space for your own hobbies, newer jobs, so acclimating to a new job, cleaning the house, right? Those tasks have to be done, working out to get healthy, etc. So yeah, and so you guys mentioned the sandwich generation, and so if you're caring for both children and older adults in your life. And so that sandwich generation is often can make people feel the stress of just more. And so, many of these things are, they are anticipated stressors, right? But it's when the culmination of them all can help us, just really cause us to feel just squeezed, absolutely. So, I want to know your thoughts, like this idea of a work-life balance. So to me, this is a myth. I'm just gonna say it like it is. So, the idea of the scales between your work and your home life being balanced is an unrealistic expectation. And I think that that's a misnomer when we use that word because on any given day, right, our responsibilities are extremely fluid, they're not static. And so our scales are not going to look balanced. So, some days your work might be here, your life might be here, and it just really depends on the day for the responsibility. So it depends on the day. Right. And and I think that's okay. I think the key to having a healthy work-life balance is that over time those scales balance out. So, I'm in academia. Fall is just historically conference season, and so I'm adding my work commitments to the calendar, and we have a shared calendar. And my husband's texting me as he's seeing the notifications go up, just wondering exactly when I'm going to be home between September and November. And so, that is a time where if I'm traveling for extension, if I'm traveling for my job, that my work scales, like if I have a deadline, a grant deadline, an article deadline, my work scales might carry more weight at the time. And so my family, needs to afford me the opportunity. And I tell them sometimes, if you want me to keep my job, I need to prioritize this at this moment. But then other times, my life responsibilities will carry the more weight. If there is ever an emergency, you best believe that that will take immediate priority. But also just general things, prioritizing. You mentioned sports games. I also have a kiddo who is doing baseball, and I have a kiddo in theater, and um, a kiddo who manages the football team. And so we have lots of responsibilities, and I want them to look back too and see that I was present at those. I want them to know that I prioritized what was important to them as well. And so it is that over time, is there a balance between the scales so that you feel like you can manage the responsibilities that you have? And because I haven't found the secret for keeping them weighted. And I think that sometimes that can create an unrealistic expectation. And so, really, work life balance is more about how you prioritize your time and energy between your work and other life responsibilities. And some days that's gonna shift. Also, I think it's important that we redefine this concept of productivity, right? Because some days that threshold looks better than others. Some days, honestly, I'm like, I have a shower and everybody is like clothed and fed in my household. That is a productive day. Sometimes my threshold is pretty low, honestly. But some days, it's not, and it's much higher. And so we can measure it by output. Sometimes, do we accomplish the goals that we set out to do? But we can also measure it by progress. Are we making progress on those things that are intentional to us? And that includes both of our work goals and our life goals. And so, are we being productive in the things that matter at this point in time? And that's going to change based on our context, our energy levels, our health for a given day, our time, other things. Because what we want to do is to avoid professional burnout. And we can burn out in any part of our life, right? So this isn't just a professional experience, but in the context of here being professionals who are engaged on this webinar, how can we avoid professional burnout? And, so a healthy work-life balance, like I meant, that's putting those management strategies into place. And, the World Health Organization defines burnout as chronic workplace stress that manifests itself in three ways: energy depletion or exhaustion, negative feelings towards your job, and reduced professional productivity. And so, what research suggests is that having a healthy work-life balance is more important than to the success and well-being of your career, having that balance, than your specialized degrees, than having supportive coworkers. The most important thing for that burnout is how well do you manage your home and life responsibilities with your work responsibilities? Because when employees have a healthier work-life balance, and again, when the flow over time has some balance to it, they tend to be more engaged at work, more present at work when they're there. They're less distracted. Their productivity increases. They take less time off for sickness, right? And we want to take time off. We'll talk about that. We want to take vacation days, but we don't want to take sick days, right? Like we want our health to be a priority, and then the healthier our work-life balance, the healthier we can be and show up and do what we need to do. And it also shows that the better your work-life balance, the better your execution of those management strategies, the longer you'll stay with the career, right? So you'll stay with the position. So you tend to stay longer. And so the juxtaposition, right, is that when workers have a poor work-life balance and poor management strategies in place, stress levels rise, productivity dips. There is a weakened immune system, your mental health is impacted. And so how can we buffer this, right? And some research indicates that only about 15% of employees are engaged at work, right? So we are distracted. We are distracted, and so we can be present. We can be busy, but we may not be very productive, right? We might be managing those that spillover. So how can we be more engaged at work when we're at work and at home when we're at home? And so it is looking at how we spend our time, point blank, how we spend our time, it matters. We need to begin to see time as a commodity that can be invested to produce a return, right? So our time is one of our most valuable but undervalued and undermanaged assets. So it's finite, right? We only have a limited amount of time, and often it doesn't correlate with our energy levels, right? And so sometimes we can have a lot of time to get a task done. We have little energy to complete that task. All right, so it's considering busyness. There's a difference in being busy and being productive. If we're not allowing ourselves space within our schedule to get things done, we may be very busy, but we don't have a lot to show for it. And I mentioned, think back to that little juggler balancing all of the plates. What does it look like to manage your resources, and which are easier to manage, which are more difficult? Because we really do want to promote a harmonious balance so that we are able to be present when we need to be present. So productivity versus procrastination. So productivity is using our time efficiently to work towards completing intentional tasks. So we are being efficient with our time. We are investing it on things that are going to produce a return, and those are intentional, right? It is not putting out fires all day. Again, that might be a busy day, but not a productive day. And how we prioritize those tasks may look different for our home life and in our work life. All right, but often the thorn in the side of productivity is procrastination. And procrastination is when we delay a task or several tasks that should be prioritized. And so why? Why? And getting at the heart of procrastination helps a lot with productivity and time management and prioritizing our responsibilities. All right, so if you are, and I am a natural procrastinator, and it is absolutely a defense mechanism for me. I am someone that's prone to anxiety, as many, I'm a firstborn, perfectionist, type A. I want things to be done right, and I hold myself to a high standard. And often that causes me sometimes, if we're honest, to shut down. And I feel like, given the audience, and we're all in academia, and I feel like many of you probably can relate to that sometimes you shut down, you procrastinate, not because you're not a hard worker, right? It has nothing to do with your character. It has to do more with your brain defending itself, and it's a coping strategy, not always a good one. And so you want to ask yourself, all right, why am I procrastinating? And there are a few reasons for that. It is, if you've heard of this fight, flight, freeze response, procrastination is our brain's way of freezing. It is our brain's way of saying, I am overwhelmed. I cannot look at that task. I can't think about accomplishing that task. And so I'm just going to put this Band-Aid over it. We're not going to do that task for a while. And so that, and in the long run, that will cause more anxiety. And so our emotions could be fueling our procrastination. And so, if we are dealing with something at home, and it's hard to just compartmentalize that when we walk into the office or we log onto a computer. Um, if you have physical needs, so if you didn't sleep well the night before, it's hard to go and be present and to think and to put together coherent sentences and to do the tasks that you need to do. If you're hungry, or you're hangry, right? Like if our emotions and our physical needs merge and we just need quite simply some fresh air or some water or a break, our physical needs. And so that could be causing our procrastination. And then, like I mentioned, it could be protection. It could be your mind's way of protecting you from a large task. It could be, one that you're nervous about your performance or that you're uncertain of what you should be doing or how you should be doing it. And you're not sure who you're supposed to ask. And so it can be our body's natural response to short-term dangers and anxiety, and when we feel threatened or when we risk failure. And this might not be, a conscious experience, right? And so you may not think to yourself, well, yeah, that is exactly why I'm procrastinating. But when you find yourself procrastinating, begin to ask yourself, why? Like, am I tired? Am I sad? Am I hungry? Am I worried that I'm going to fail? Am I overwhelmed with tasks that I don't even know where to start? And then oftentimes, if we just start somewhere, we can snowball our momentum. And then maybe you don't know, your deadline isn't sure, your role in the project isn't sure, you're not sure. What skill sets you bring in or how you can be most helpful. And so maybe you just need to clear up some of those things so that you can begin working. And when we're also so looking at productivity versus procrastination is one way that we can better manage our time. But another way is to create routines. And so we're going to talk about personal routines and professional routines and how important. I know that several of you on here, just in your responses in the text chat, mentioned that you're parents, and so that is one of the things that you are managing. And really, with children, we know the importance of a routine, and when they are out of sync. It's why I was so thankful when my elementary schooler, especially went back to school because he needed that routine. He needed the routine that the summer didn't provide him. Well, we're just grown up children, and I think we forget that, and that our bodies also thrive on routines and healthy routines. And so the routines we establish in our personal life will help us professionally and vice versa. So there are three that are important, to research to establish good sleep habits, habits around meal times, and then exercise habits. So that's just simply moving your body. You can, if that includes going to a gym, that is running marathons, that's fabulous. But if it's as simple as, okay, I need to take 20 minutes to walk around my neighborhood to help me shift from work, like your work self to your home self, it's good for your body. It's also good for your mind and your mental health. And so, are you going to bed at the same time and waking up at the same time? Are you getting enough sleep? I am guilty of it for sending emails all hours of the night or checking them really after hours. And I try to reel that in if I notice myself doing it. Because the longer we work in the day, the harder it is for our minds to reel it in and calm down so we can get restful, restorative sleep. And so it's our sleep. It really impacts our health. It's where our cells, our brain cells will regenerate nightly, the neurogenesis concept, so that they renew, our cells renew and heal themselves from our brains to our guts to our body overnight. And so when our sleep takes an impact, we'll see that manifest itself in how healthy we are. And it can make us more susceptible to those illnesses, which again keep us from being present at home and on the clock. Are we, uh, and again, I'm guilty and I have to consciously call myself out. Are we on a screen? Are we staring at a TV or a Kindle or your phone too close to bedtime where our brains can't begin to disassociate, where that blue light is keeping us up and telling confusing our circadian rhythm? So don't undervalue sleep and the importance of it. All right, so then mealtime. So it is noon, it's the noon hour. I hope several of you are eating your, if you're watching this live, if you're recording, it might be different if you're watching the recording. But if you're watching this live, I hope you're eating your lunch while you're watching. So many of us get in this habit of not stopping to eat meals. We work and we don't eat regularly and stop regularly to eat. We don't eat together as a family. We might plop down in front of the television when we eat at home. We may skip breakfast or eat it in our car, and we just don't have routines around mealtime. And it also means we're probably not choosing the best fuel for our body in terms of healthy meals that again fuel our body. Instead, we're just getting something in us that we can move on to the next thing. And so, are we stopping to prioritize? And that might mean at work too. Are you stopping to have meals with coworkers, or at home to have meals with your family, or to meet friends out? But are you stopping regularly for lunch? Are you prioritizing breakfast or dinner or those meals to really fuel your body in healthy ways? Or are you just in rapid fire mode? And then the last one for the personal routines is this idea of exercise. Is are you moving your body? I have a job like many of you that requires me to be in front of a computer a lot. And I'll notice that on the days where I barely get up from Zooms and from emails and writing and things, I never realized the aging until I bought my first pair of compression socks. And I just feel like a new chapter of my life sadly had begun. But it was a sign of me sitting at a computer for too long without moving my body and not prioritizing getting regular routine movement. And again, a study show that as little as 20 to 40 minutes a day. So this is not strenuous exercise. This is movement of your body. Do you have time built in for that? Could be walking your dog, in the morning or the afternoon, a neighborhood stroll, going for a bike ride with your kids, heading out to the arboretum, taking a break from your day, and maybe during your lunch hour after you've eaten, go for a 20-minute walk around campus to aid in your digestion and whatnot. But begin examining if your life feels chaotic, examine your routines and look at what is working well for you and what needs to work a little bit better. Where can you improve those routines? Okay, so that also part of our routines is not at home. And you'll see these are not, easily compartmentalized categories, right? Like we're humans and we're the same person on or off the clock. And in remote and hybrid workplaces, often those spill over to one another. And so some of your personal routines will impact your work life and vice versa. But there are 4 professional routines that are important for your productivity and for creating that harmonious balance and some management strategies. And the first are prep routines. So, what are you doing to prep and prepare for your next day? And so, this might mean if you go in and report to an office, before you leave, are you returning your office to a state of order so that when you come in, you can hit the ground running? Or are you leaving it chaotic and files and papers and candy wrappers on your desk? And because there's a lot of research that supports that the clutter in our environments is a direct reflection of the clutter and the chaos in our schedules and in our minds. And so if you have a cluttered environment at home or at work, chances are good that it's reflective of what's going on internally. So, are you prepping your workspace for the next day? Are you prepping to leave for work on time? So, do you know what you're going to wear the next day? Often, again, we'll do this for our kids. We'll make sure they know what they're wearing. But do we know what we're wearing? Or are we frantically trying to throw something together to iron something out the door, to be chaotic? Can we pack our lunch the night before? Can we set out that healthy breakfast so that we don't have to skip a meal because we have prepped for it? So this will allow us to fuel our bodies, and which fuels our minds, which promotes peace when we're getting ready. So, how are we prepping for things? Preparing your work bag the day before. And so, if you're going into an office, do you have the things you need so that you get there? And the same thing, if you're working at home, do you have what you need to do your job? All right, so then what are your production routines? And so, what are those things you can do throughout your workday that increases your production or your output? And so, maybe it's stacking your meetings or gathering all your supplies before you start a project. Can you do like tasks together? Can you do things that are geographically close? So, can you be productive if you're, running this one errand? Can you do a couple of things? If you're getting up to stretch, can you fill your water bottle? Can you drop something off to a coworker? But so you're not running around, but that you're intentional with your time, you're batching your task, that you have production routines that will allow your mind, they signal to your mind, hey, it's time to start working, and this makes me, do you save your social media and your email for 5 minutes before the hour? What are some of your production routines? Are you pausing? So going back to the compression sock example, some days I'll realize I haven't stopped. I haven't gotten up from my computer from 8:30 to 4:30. I haven't stopped for lunch. I barely stopped to go to the bathroom, and I have not paused. Are we pausing to stretch our legs, to get a cup of coffee, to fill our water bottles, to say hello to a coworker? Are we pausing so that we're not running ourselves in the ground? And so pausing allows us, that our scheduled pause breaks allows us to decompress. So if you're an Apple Watch wearer and you get that little ding at 10 minutes to the hour that it's time to stand up and stretch, it's a good time. Give yourself that 10 minutes to go fill your water bottle, go to the restroom, go chat with a coworker, scroll social media, check your email, do something that pauses the task so that you can return focused. And so it helps us decompress, it helps us refocus. And then, do you have built-in play routines? And so this can be, having fun, schedule time to have fun with coworkers. Are you taking your vacation days? Do you have time where you're not checking your email, where you're not trying to juggle your task? Do you have those boundaries set? The older I get, unless I have an important deadline, I do my best not to work on the weekends. That is my family time, and quite honestly, my mind needs it so that I can work when I come Monday. And so I'm getting better about scheduling that play time because I need downtime. It's good for my relationships with my friends and family. It's good for my mental health. And then honestly, it's good for my working relationships because I'm upfront about my parameters, but also it keeps me from feeling burnout or resentful when I go to work because I've taken time off. And so, do you have built-in time away? All right, and so I've mentioned some of these just kind of throughout our conversation, but as we're looking to establish balance in our work and between work and home, really it comes down to how we're organizing our time. Routine is a part of that, having routine, but also, eliminating the things that we don't need to be doing. If you've heard me present before, I joke about one of the benefits of having teenagers is that I stopped unloading the dishwasher a couple of years ago. That is something I have eliminated from my workload and I have delegated to someone else in my house. Now, that's my situation. It's contextual, right, for this point in my family's life cycle. But are there things you can eliminate, delegate, or outsource? And so maybe that is paying a neighborhood kid to mow your lawn on the weekends so that it's something off of your schedule. Can you, and this is both at home or in the office, are you doing projects because you just don't trust someone else to do them? When there is someone else who should be doing that task. Looking at the things that are taking your time, perhaps keeping a productivity journal so you can look at where your time is going and then is there another way to meet this need that takes some things off of your shoulder? And it may be like at work, a couple weeks ago, a, a project that we've had going on for a decade, and reevaluating that, saying, is this worth it? Is it time to sunset this program? And we all agreed as a team, yeah, it was time. And so that was the reward for that didn't outweigh the effort that was put into the project. And so we agreed, hey, it's time to just let this go. So, taking a look at the things that are producing that return. So remember, if time is a commodity, are we investing that time so we see a return at home or in the office? And if it's not, then maybe look at those things that aren't producing good return and realize if they're necessary or how else they can be met. Um, then and that goes in with things like automate. In the age of technology, we can automate our, laundry, our dishwashers, our crock pots, or slow cookers. We can automate our bill pay. We can automate grocery subscriptions and medicine and so many things. Are there things that we can automate again as a form of outsourcing to take a task off of our to-do plate? What can we automate to make things simpler? How can we use technology to our benefit to just relieve some of the load off of us? And so we can automate emails and responses and out of office replies, but what can we do to automate different things that again can relieve some of the pressure from our schedules? All right, so can you consolidate? How can you simplify? So I talked about batching things in our schedule, prepping the night before. Maybe you can meal prep for the week, so then you have 4 days of lunches ready. You can go ahead, if you do laundry on the weekend, have your outfits for everyone in your household set out the night before, so it's grab and go. But it's little things that invested on the front end can help streamline things on the back end. So what can we consolidate, simplify, batch? And then the final is communicate. If I haven't communicated with a colleague that, here are the times I'm working, then they may, not understand why I'm not getting back to them within business hours. Or the same, I teach. And so with my students, I let them know 1 to 2 business days. So if you send me something at 9 o'clock at night and it's due at 9 a.m. the next morning, I'm probably not going to have responded to you. But I've communicated that ahead of time. So it takes the pressure off of me to respond. I have colleagues who put that in their email signature, that their working hours may be different, or thank you for your response. I will reply within business hours. But are we communicating our needs, our boundaries? If we share a calendar with family members, are we communicating? That's another way we can use technology to help automate communication processes. So if you have someone in your life that you can share a calendar with because you share responsibilities. So, our 2 teenagers, excuse me, my husband and myself, we share a calendar. And my first thing to the kids is put it on the calendar. If you've got a practice, if you've got something, put it on the calendar, because it is the only thing that remotely keeps us in sync. And so is that something that could work for you? But just how can you better organize your time? Okay, so we'll spend the last little bit of time together talking about practicing personal and professional self-care strategies. And so there are a few more personal ones, and then we'll end with some professional care strategies, and then what to do when we're overwhelmed. So with self-care, engage your senses, because when our senses are engaged, our mind, and so the amygdala and our mind is kind of that triggers that fight, flight, freeze response. When we engage higher level thinking, when we engage our senses, like even if you're having an anxiety attack or a panic attack, it put in a sour piece of candy, because your body's going to focus on that sour piece of candy, and it's going to your anxious response is going to begin to self-regulate. Because when we engage our senses, it acts as a buffer against heightened anxiety and whatnot. And so, look, are you comfortable these are both professional and personal strategies, but, are you visually, are you looking at clutter? Does your home and work, does it smell good? Is it clean? Like, can you, if you're at home, light a candle or do a diffuser or, something to engage your senses, a pot of coffee. It's why we like Starbucks, right? It's not really Starbucks coffee. It's the experience and the smell and the atmosphere, but our senses are engaged. All right, so cultivate creativity. Some of you in the chat pod, mentioned hobbies, but how important these are for our self-care, that we have ways, whether it is an adult coloring book that we can doodle on rather than scrolling through our phone to just help us unwind. If it is a garden, I'm in FCS extension, so quilting, cross stitching, cooking, whatever it is that sparks your creative juices. And then in that same, how are you pursuing joy? What things make you happy and are you doing them? Do you have something little that you can do? They don't have to be big. It doesn't have to be a vacation to Disney World. That's fantastic. But that's not the little day-to-day things, but maybe there is a coworker you can text or a family member that you can send a meme to and get a laugh. But what are some little things that bring you joy and are they integrated? A favorite song. And some of these you'll see so if music helps relax you, that engages your senses and it brings you joy. Okay. Practicing gratitude. A lot of research supports that if we practice gratitude and keep a thankfulness journal that we jot down before we go to bed, 3 things we're thankful for. It will help us sleep better at night. And that's part of just reframing what is going right, the little things. If it feels like nothing is going right, there's air in your lungs. That's the start of something to be thankful for. Are we challenging our mind? Maybe that's the hobby or a crossword puzzle or learning a foreign language, but what are we doing that's different than the things we know how to do, that keeps our mind sharp, that allows us to focus on something out of the ordinary, that can reduce uh, propensity for dementia and other things. But challenging our minds is so important for lifelong self-care. And then what can we do to center ourselves when we are worked up? And so is it going for a walk, putting on a song, having a cup of coffee, prayer, meditation? What do you do to center yourself when life feels chaotic? And the last 3 for personal self-care, embracing our emotions. And, also in society, it's not okay to cry, right? It's really okay to cry. Some new research out of Harvard, it just supports this idea that when we cry, tears release oxytocin and they release serotonin, and these feel-good chemicals can help regulate our stress when we are upset. So allowing ourselves to cry can help us physically and emotionally begin to calm down. And so, are you embracing your emotions? Are you laughing? And, are we allowing ourselves to feel our emotions? If you can't remember the last time you've had a good belly laugh, think about things that would help. Is there a person you can go out with? Is there a comedy show, a movie that you can watch? What can you do with your kids or a loved one to activate that emotion? And so how important that is, both for the tears, for the laughs. Being body conscious is very similar. Are we listening to our body when it tells us we're sleepy, when we're hungry, we're stressed? Are we listening to these signals? Because our body's going to whisper, and if we don't listen to it whisper, it's going to scream. And if you're not being aware of when you're feeling stressed, it's gonna catch up with you. And then socialize. Clearly, we're meant to socialize with others. How are we doing that so that we fight the isolation epidemic that we're a part of right now? Okay, and then many of these fall in suit with the personal self-care strategies, but some tips for caring for yourself as a professional Fueling your craft. What are you doing to keep your interest in whatever it is you do? Is there a book you can read, a conference, a webinar like this one, or one that's specific to what you do? How can you do what you do better? Because it challenges your mind, it keeps you interested, it keeps you up to date on your field, which enhances your human capital. But how are you fueling your craft? Are you going to professional conferences? Are you doing things that make you better at what you do? Do you have clocking out routines? So, something to signal to your mind that it is time to shift gears. So, not, minimizing your email, not checking it to the next day, going for a walk, listening to a certain song on the way home, your drive home. What are you doing? Is it changing your clothes when you get in? What is your clocking out routine? And similarly, do you have a clocking in routine, that production routine that signals, hey, it's time to get going, but how do you signal to your brain? Let's shut it off for the day. Are you recognizing your stress? Are you listening to your body? Do you realize when you're getting short with coworkers, or your fuse is dwindling? Are you recognizing that so that it doesn't sneak up on you? Are you taking time for yourself? Those are those pause breaks. How are you taking time for yourself? An estimated, I think it's 60% of vacation time. Yeah, 60% of Americans don't use all of their accrued vacation time in a given year. Even today, I went to send a couple emails and I noticed multiple coworkers had away messages. And it dawned on me that I also had some vacation time that would expire at the end of this month if I didn't use it. And so are you using the time, one of your benefits, the time that you're getting paid for, you have that. And so are you taking time for yourself? And then are you communicating? Again, if you're overwhelmed, are you communicating that to a superior, to a colleague who can help? Are you communicating that to a therapist or clergy member or a family member or a loved one, a friend, if things are overwhelming? And so how are you communicating that stress, that overwhelm, some of those, looking back at reasons we procrastinate? If there are reasons, are we communicating that? Okay. And then lastly, kind of as we round out our hour, how do we prioritize these responsibilities? Because we're juggling, right? The juggle is so real. When Izetta, she suggested that title, and I thought it was so perfect because it's real for all of us. And how do we juggle? And so I think you can see it here, my camera. There's a little blue ball. It's not disappearing, but my camera's making it disappear. All right, so I have a little rubber ball. All right, and when I'm in person, I'll use this as an illustration. If I were to drop this ball, it would bounce, right? It's rubber, it would bounce. This one actually lights up when it's dropped. All right, but if this ball were made of glass and I dropped it, it would shatter. So when we're juggling, we would prioritize our balls differently if they were made of glass versus rubber. And our life responsibilities are much the same way. And so, one suggestion is to ask yourself, if you've got just too much, all your balls are about to come down, is what balls need to be prioritized? Which responsibilities, if I drop them right now, were glass, they would shatter and they would be so hard to put together those pieces. All right, that might be a big grant deadline, right? USDA doesn't care that I had an emergency come up. They have a firm deadline and I didn't meet it. All right, so that might be a priority. Also, if my kid is sick, like I said, I'm out the door. That would be very hard if I'm the one who needs to respond to that. That would take priority at the moment. All right, but there are other things, that an email that doesn't get sent, a soft deadline that I have with a colleague that I know they're not going to, they ask for it by Friday, pretty sure no, they're not going to look at it till Monday. And so, can I communicate with them that I need an extension? And that's a rubber ball. If I have to drop it, it'll be okay. I can pick it up when my plate is a little clearer. And so, if you are struggling to prioritize what is important, And this will change from hour to hour, from day to day, from place to place. But are you prioritizing those responsibilities that are glass? So what balls are glass and what are rubber? And then finally, what to do if you're sinking in to-dos. And this goes back to some of those self-care strategies that we discussed earlier in the hour. The first is find some way to calm yourself. If you feel so overwhelmed that you're stuck in that freeze mode, then take a deep breath, figure out what centers you. If it's starting music, grabbing a cup of coffee, going for fresh air, calling somebody, giving yourself 10 minutes to vent to someone, what helps calm you? Once you're calmed, reel it back in and do a brain dump. Make a list of all the things that need to be done and when do they need to be done at home, but just dump it all, because when we brain dump, it helps release some of that stress from our mind and it helps us see what we need to do. And once we see that list, we can identify those main concerns. What are those glass balls that I have to get done today that are time sensitive, that have some weight to them that would shatter if I dropped it? What are the main concerns for just today? And then the other items on that list, because you can't do it all, find time in your calendar where you can allot everything a spot in your calendar. 30 minutes for this, an hour for this. This can be done next week. But begin to take and put that somewhere so that, again, subconsciously, that shows your mind you have a plan for it, and that there is time to do those things. And if it doesn't fit in your calendar, that's where you can communicate, you can look at what to eliminate, you can be realistic, because again, it's like that 5-year rule. Like, in 5 years, will this really matter? And so after you've added everything to the calendar, get started. Whatever that main concern, that most critical item, start on it. I love this little picture. The best way to get something done is just begin. Oftentimes, if we start, it builds momentum and we can keep going. But just start on the most critical item and then communicate, communicate, communicate. Because we isolate ourselves. We feel like we need to be the superhero, and often that leaves us sinking. And so I'll just leave you with this. The productivity is never an accident. It's always the result of a commitment to excellence, intelligent planning, and focused effort. So it's planning, it's intentionality, it's focusing our time, it's realizing that we were never intended to do it all the time. So, all right, we're to the end of the hour. Happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I wish you all the best as you juggle all those glass and rubber balls that you have going.